Okay. Is everyone having a good time? Alrighty. Apologies for the green beard. If you're visiting this morning for our Christmas celebration, a very Merry Christmas from myself, from the pastor here at the Billabong, and from the whole of the Billabong family. It's great to have you here. And I hope the rest of your day, whatever you're doing, is filled with joy and with relaxation and with Christmas pudding, of course, and all of those good things. In a second, I want to share with you a short few words about hope. Hope has been the theme for us at the Billabong in December, and it's one of the 4 traditional themes of the Christian Advent season, the lead up to Christmas. But the meaning of hope is maybe a little different to what you might think in the Bible. And rather than explaining that myself, I want to show you a clip which explains it.
So let's say you want to describe the feeling of anticipating.
Yep, you can play that.
A future that's better than the present. You might be giddy or excited or maybe unsure, but most of us know that experience. We call it hope. It's a state of anticipation, and it's crucial for healthy human existence. And it's a really important concept in the Bible. In fact, there are many words for hope in the ancient languages of the Bible, and they're all fascinating. In the Old Testament, there are 2 main Hebrew words translated as hope. The first is yachal, which means simply to wait for. Like in the story of Noah and the ark, as the flood waters recede, Noah had to yachal for weeks. The other Hebrew word is kavah, which also means to wait. It's related to the Hebrew word kav, which means cord. When you pull a kav tight, you produce a state of tension until there's release. That's kavah, the feeling of tension and expectation while you wait for something to happen. The prophet Isaiah depicts God as a farmer who plants vines and kavahs for good grapes. Or the prophet Micah talks about farmers who both kavah and yachal for morning dew to give moisture to the land. So in biblical Hebrew, hope is about waiting or expectation. But waiting for what? In the period of Israel's prophets, as the nation was sinking into self-destruction, Isaiah said, "At this moment, the Lord's hiding his face from Israel, so I will kavah for him." The only hope Isaiah had in those dark days was the hope for God himself. You find this same notion of hope all over the book of Psalms, where these words appear over 40 times. In almost every case, what people are waiting for is God. Like in Psalm 130, the poet cries out from a pit of despair, "I kavah for the Lord, let Israel yachal for the Lord, because he's loyal and will redeem Israel from its sins." Biblical hope is based on a person, which makes it different from optimism. Optimism is about choosing to see in any situation how circumstances could work out for the best. But biblical hope is not focused on circumstances. In fact, hopeful people in the Bible often recognize there's no evidence things will get better, but you choose hope anyway. Like the prophet Hosea, he lived in a dark time when Israel was being oppressed by foreign empires, and he chose hope when he said God could turn this valley of trouble into a door of hope, like the day when Israel came up from the land of Egypt. God had surprised his people with redemption back in the days of the Exodus, and he could do so again. So it's God's past faithfulness that motivates hope for the future. You look forward by looking backward, trusting in nothing other than God's character. It's like the poet of Psalm 39 who says, "And now, O Lord, what else can I kavah for? You are my yachal." In the New Testament, the earliest followers of Jesus cultivated this similar habit of hope. They believed that Jesus' life, death, and resurrection was God's surprising response to our slavery to evil and death. The empty tomb opened up a new door of hope, and they used the Greek word elpis to describe this anticipation. The Apostle Peter said that Jesus' resurrection opened up a living hope, that people can be reborn, to become new and different kinds of humans. More than once, the Apostle Paul says the good news about Jesus announces the elpis of glory. In both cases, this elpis is based on a person, the risen Jesus, who has overcome death. And this hope wasn't just for humans. The apostles believed that what happened to Jesus in the resurrection was a foretaste of what God had planned for the whole universe. In Paul's words, it's a hope that creation itself will be liberated from slavery to corruption into freedom when God's children are glorified. So Christian hope is bold. waiting for humanity and the whole universe to be rescued from evil and death. And some would say it's crazy, and maybe it is. But biblical hope isn't optimism based on the odds. It's a choice to wait for God to bring about a future that's as surprising as a crucified man rising from the dead. Christian hope looks back to the risen Jesus in order to look forward. And so we wait. That's what the biblical words for hope are all about.
Alrighty. So at the beginning of that video, there was these two Hebrew words.
So let's say you want to describe the feeling.
These two Hebrew words that, for hope, that meant waiting, and then you might remember there was the one that said like a tension, like the tension of a cord. That brought something to mind for me when I watched this video. This evening at 5:15, my wife Karen and I and my son Micah, we fly to America to visit Karen's family and to have a holiday. It's the first plane flight from Micah, and 28 hours between here and New York is going to be interesting with a 15-month-year-old. But we're all ready with the Fisher-Price iPad cover and Wiggles videos loaded up, all that kind of thing. But the first time that I travelled to the US, it wasn't with my wife and my son. It was to visit my then girlfriend, Karen, and to propose to her. Now, we at the time had been apart for an agonising 10 weeks. And we'd only been dating for 5 weeks before that. But I remember the feeling leading up to stepping off the plane. It was very much like that, like what we heard those Hebrew words meant in the video. In fact, the explanation of this sense of hope, it brought this experience to mind. It was like a waiting for, like the tension of a cord, but not anxious, more and not hopeful as in just like wishful thinking kind of hopeful, but waiting and ready with excitement. That was the feeling of getting to see Karen again. And so if that is what hope is when it comes to God, it's much more than just wishful thinking. The plane is going to land, and I don't have to pray fervently that we'll make it. It's just like a waiting and an anticipation. On the other hand, if I had flown to America 4.5 years ago, simply hoping that a beautiful girl from the Carolinas would be waiting for me at the other end as I stepped off, even though I'd never met such a girl, it possibly could have happened, but not very likely. Even if I'd met such a girl online and never spoken to her face to face, it still would be pretty risky assuming that she would meet me at the airport. But when I flew to Charlotte 4.5 years ago, I was 98% sure that Karen would be waiting for me in the airport because, maybe 99%, because I already knew her. I'd already spent time with her. And so sure, it was hope, but that hope was grounded on something. It was grounded on a relationship that we already had. It wasn't sort of a wishful thinking kind of hope, but a waiting for with anticipation kind of hope. And so it is with God. You can hope that one day when you step off of the journey of this life, that at the other end there will be this divine being who will be waiting there to greet you. But that's not much more than a wishful thinking kind of hope. The good news of Christmas, of course, is that this divine being has already come to our home, to our earth, to make his home here for a while so we could get to know him, a bit like Karen when she came to Australia, so I could get to know her. And I'm aware that none of you are quite old enough to have met Jesus in the flesh 2,000 years ago, but what he did was leave his message and pass that on through his followers. More importantly, he left us his spirit so that we could experience what his friends and the shepherds and that teenage couple called Mary and Joseph experienced, which was the closeness of God. He was close so a relationship could be established, can be established. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to sort of live through this life with a hope, a wishful thinking kind of hope, that at the end of this journey called life, that a God I have no idea about will be waiting there to greet me. It's not really the way I want to live. I want to know this God now, so that my hope is simply waiting for a life where all of the other stuff doesn't get in the way of my friendship with him. And I'm so delighted to be able to say, as I'm sure many of you are, that I do know this God. Not in a boastful way, because I haven't done anything to make me worthy of that relationship and friendship. He did that. He came down, he became like me and you and I, and so that you and I, through the eyes of generations before us, could see what he's like and begin to trust him. And now this God listens to me, speaks to me, is patient with me, loves me, and he loves you too. Most of you here know that, that's why you're here. Some of you know it deep down and you just haven't kind of grasped hold of it yet. And so my prayer today, this Christmas, is that you would grab hold of that and that you would tell someone this Christmas so that that journey can really begin. Christmas is about God coming close to us. Not just 2,000 years ago and then he goes again, but now. God will not force himself on us. That wouldn't be loving. But what we must do is ask him to make himself known to us if that's what we want. And as he does that, it leads us to change our ways, to ask for forgiveness for all that time we've been ignoring him, and to begin a relationship that means one day when we step off this journey of life, like stepping off a plane, that we know the one who will be waiting for us, because his name is Jesus, and we met him here. We got to know him here. We developed a friendship with him now, here in our home, so that one day we could be with him in his home. Amen? So I want to pray that we would, every single one of us, would ask that he would reveal himself to us this Christmas. God, thank you for coming close to us in the person of Jesus 2,000 years ago. But thank you also for coming close to us every single day. Lord, you want to make yourself known to us, but you are also loving enough that you don't force us to accept that. You wait until we ask you to have a friendship. And so I pray this morning that for those of us who need to just realize that and ask you to make yourself known and to begin a relationship, that you would help us do that in a simple prayer, in a simple moment of silence, a simple recognition that you are the King of Kings and you are the divine being who's waiting for us at the end of this life, but have made yourself known now. Father, I thank you for Jesus. We thank you for everything that he went through, that he came to make himself not high in privilege and status, but a lowly servant, born to a poor teenage couple in not less than ideal circumstances, so that we would know that you want to understand us and know us, that we could have a friendship and a relationship with you. I pray that we would realize that and accept and embrace that just a little more this Christmas in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. Team, do you want to come and lead us in a final carol? Come